Yeah.
When it's so bright outside. I know it's.
I would walk over the beach. I got to walk the car. I wasn't there. No, I'm not waiting.
We have to like safety day at.
Almost.
Nice.
You like that shell?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have actually called. No, but my dad called me. I was like, it's public safety day, and then. Nope, it was just all locked or whatever. Yeah, like Humboldt Ash and then a helicopter took, like there was. You know, just like communication, was it gonna land, is it not, it was late, no, we knew, and then the wait was super, you know. And we had, I think that we had more fun, I had so fun. Like, that's like a little bear, that whole, like, who's next? So, they're excited about it. We're gonna go, but, so that. Their child and their best friend. Sounds great. That's great.
Yes, that's. Very, kind of your. Yeah.
Today we didn't expect to be out there in sun for like an hour or so. I'm good with that. Shake your. It's so the piano got the primer, so now. It was so sad that I thought her phone so I took this slide. But overheard it, great. If we did shit over. I'm like, you don't burn. Yeah. Plastic.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the side. People when I was like, please run that, please try it.
Where it's not like kids get.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
up on the top. Did I remember?
Yeah.
This is even.
Actually, so just share.
I. Which early, so you guys. Thank you. And we'll have to roll this up.
We can bring it home, so, yeah, the application.
Yeah.
Work.
Can't you use it out when I talk? You don't care. Yeah. I feel like higher would be okay, but it also might. This is without context. Or, I mean,
Hey, John. Vision. Too windy today. But the sun was up to be. Oh, no, it's like, it's good to believe on the green yesterday. The day was shining guard miles so much. What are you gonna do then? Oh, irrigation days. I know. I didn't know. Good. Big band, summer band, Sundays. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so that was, so the pressure's off and down and I can, really good time. I think we got new people, okay, 2 people involved, it's got to do with this.
I heard some good things about you. I remember.
Well, we changed it every time. So. Okay. We do it a couple of times a year. We haven't taken that. This was just a.
Ready?
Recording in progress.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call the June 9th, 2026 City Council meeting to order. I'd like to start by mentioning that Councilor Breckenridge will not be joining us this evening, and we are also coming back from closed session. We have nothing to report from that. So we'll just go ahead and start with our Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The next thing for the council is to approve tonight's agenda. Any questions or comments on the council? Okay, any questions or comments from members of the public regarding tonight's city council agenda? All right, seeing none, back to the council, and I will move to approve tonight's agenda. I'll second, and Bryce seconds. All those in favor? Aye. So that passes unanimously. We also have administratively the approval of minutes from the May 6th meeting and the May 12th meeting. Councilors, I'll start with you. Any questions or changes to those minutes?
I would just note that I was absent from the first meeting, so I'll have to abstain on the vote for those minutes, but I was present for the second.
Okay, I'll call for a vote in two separate votes. I wanted to say thank you to staff for the comprehensiveness of both of those sets of minutes, because those were complicated meetings and it was, outstanding. Really, really nice job. So thank you. Any questions, changes, comments from members of the public on the minutes from May 6th or May 12th? Okay, back to the council. So is there let's see, you were out on which one, Bryce, the 12th?
The first one.
The first one, the 6th. Okay, so I'll move to approve the minutes for May 6th. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And Jack seconds, and then all those in favor, and any abstentions?
I abstained because I wasn't there at the meeting.
Okay, so Bryce will abstain. And that's for the May 6th minutes. So May 12th minutes, is there a move to approve?
I'll move to approve the May 12th minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, and Jack seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, great. So we have the minutes approved, and with that, we'll move on to council reports. I'll start on my right, I guess. John, do you have anything you'd like to report?
Let's see, we didn't have a Redwood Economic Development Council meeting this last one.
Got anything for you?
Yeah, so earlier this month, with the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, I got to tour the exciting Diablo nuclear power plant in San Luis Obispo. The power plant has been running for the last 43 years, generating clean, carbon-free power to the grid in California. It basically provides 10% of the energy we consume at the state. Currently, the state of California really increased their lease to 2030 because it originally was going to be closed down in 2025. But due to some shortages and some energy demands, the governor decided to increase their lease. So the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, all their board was invited to tour the plants, ask any questions. It was a really fascinating tour. And if any people have any questions for me after, they can definitely reach out, and I'd love to share what I learned. Thanks.
Thank you. Bryce, do you have anything you want to report on?
Yeah, the last HCOG meeting, we made the finding that there are no unmet transit needs in the county that are reasonable to meet. We approved our overall work plan, and a particular interest to Trinidad is that our final RENA number was approved. So Trinidad will be expected to create 27 new housing units by year 2035. That's our RENA allocation. Something to shoot for.
25, did you say?
27 units
27.
by the year 2035. That's all I have on HCOG.
Okay, thank you. I just have a quick one. I attended the LAFCO meeting on May 20th. It was mostly administrative in nature. Again, it's that time of year, so we discussed budgets and kind of work plans for the fiscal year. We also discussed the membership selection committee and approved a professional services contract for LAFCO for their executive officer and also their legal counsel services. And that was also my last meeting. So my term is up with LAFCO. That selection committee I just described will be choosing someone else from one of the cities to replace me on the LAFCO board. So that's that. Any questions from the council on anything we just discussed? All right, any questions from or comments from members of the community on the council report outs? Okay. All right, then in that case, we're going to move on to our next item, which is the public safety report. So I'll turn it over to Gabe for that.
Sure. What's wrong with this microphone, but I'm going to speak for a quick second. And I will turn it over to our Lieutenant Holt, who is with us right now. Hopefully he can hear me. Lieutenant Holt, are you on?
Hi, Gabe. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Kyle Holt. I'm a lieutenant with the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office. I have some stats from May that I can go over with you guys. Pretty basic breakdown. For May, we had a total of 76 calls for service in the Trinidad city limits and immediate area surrounding the city limits. Breakdown of those calls, 14 of them were transfers from other agencies. So could be a lot of explanations for that. 12 of them were Trinidad patrol calls. 9 were patrol checks. So basically the same thing. 5 misuse of 911, 4 agency assists, 4 animal problems, 3 pedestrian stops, 2 animal bite calls, which I talked to Gabe about and confirmed it was actually the same call that was pinned and reported a second time. So just one of those. 2 dispatch reports, 2 general disturbances, 2 suspicious person calls, 2 traffic stops, 2 welfare checks, and then 1 call each for the remaining categories: assault and battery, be on the lookout, BOLO, 1 burglary, 1 civil service, 1 extra patrol request, 1 follow-up investigation, 1 panic alarm, 1 probation check conducted, 1 radio outage, 1 suicidal subject, 1 unwanted subject, 1 vehicle burg, and 1 vehicle investigation. It looks like the majority of the calls were centered around the post office, Murphy's Market, Chevron area in town. And busiest days and times of the week appear to be Friday and Saturday. Majority of the calls came in on those days between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. And I know that we had some personnel up at the elementary school today for the school safety event that they had up there. So I think we brought the Bearcat and some personnel up there. So I hope everything went well with that. I haven't received a report yet from our personnel, but they were excited to come up there and see you guys.
So far, we've heard that was really well received. So thank you for sending folks up here. And that was a great report. I thought it was really interesting to hear kind of where confirming where the hot spots are, by Murphy's and the post office and so forth. I think we all kind of know that intuitively, but it's great to see the data. And then also that, Friday, Saturday nights, right? Makes total sense. So yeah, really appreciate you guys, tackling that. John had a
I
question.
had one question. I seem to feel that there's been an increase in law enforcement activity in the state park over there by Mill Creek. That's on the north end of town. It's that small state park strip. Do you have any interaction with the state park law enforcement rangers?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the further north you go in the county, the thinner law enforcement gets, and so we depend a lot on our state parks, national parks, CHP, Fish and Game. When we get up in the north part of the county, I know that there were several search warrants served today. We helped state parks with some wood theft investigations that they were conducting. So I don't know for sure if that is associated with anything in the Trinidad area, but we do coordinate and assist them quite a bit.
I don't know if it's the nice weather is bringing everybody out to the park and therefore a lot more suspicious activity taking place. But the reason I asked is we live close to the park and we sometimes see what's going on and flashing red lights and state park law enforcement. Those guys are real professionals. I'm really impressed with the way they handle things over there.
Yeah, they have great customer service, but they're also willing to dig in and get their hands dirty too when the call requires it.
Other questions or comments from the council? Bryce,
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from members of the public or comments for the lieutenant? All right, I just see, but Gabe does.
Yeah, Lieutenant Hull, I did want to echo what Mayor Kelly said about your observations. I know we haven't had a chance to meet face to face since you took over, but your observations are right on. I really appreciate your, just the way you caught those trends. You can see those trends in those stats, and even the follow up about the bite incident. I wrote an email about that to Lieutenant Hull, and he got right back to me. So I appreciate that attention to detail as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Gabe.
All right, is that okay? Thank you very much for joining us. Let's see, our next item is items from the floor. So at this time, members of the public can come to the podium or raise your hand online and speak about things that are not on tonight's agenda. So if there's anything you want to cover go ahead, yes.
Thanks for letting me speak. I'm Rodney Owen. I'm Executive Director of Children's Services. We run the Salmonberry Preschool. I was there last month, and I just wanted to kind of come back again, let you guys know, we've been doing a lot of public outreach. We've already raised, I believe, $12,000 as of today. So that's really exciting. I want to thank the community for their willingness to kind of respond to this issue. We are still looking for more children of preschool age, and programs. yeah, just thank you for considering, the support for our programs and the children of the community.
Did you have more registrations yet, or do you know what the status is on that?
So right now, I know we have 6 pre-applications come in. 2 of those have followed through and turned in the follow-up paperwork to become certified. So we sent out at the end of May the follow-up document we need. So we're hoping to get those additional 4, and then we have 2 returning bids, so that would put us at 8. Size 16 class. We're also exploring some other ways of reducing our operating costs if we're, running at a lower number of children. So, yeah,
That's great.
As of today,
That's good progress. Yeah, and just I did receive a text message today from a member of the public who was encouraging us to consider helping out, and then also mentioned that the community would be willing to help out. So I think there are people out there that looking at this. So anyway, I just want to mention that. So
yeah, it's been really great the feedback we've received. We're already.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Well,
Thank you all very much. Thanks for being here.
I'm here to talk about San Mary's as well. I want to say good evening, Mayor Kelly and council members and community members listening. My name is Cecilia Lenarte, and I serve as the site representative for San Mary Preschool. I'm excited to be here tonight and grateful to be able to share some encouraging updates about our preschool program. First, I'd like to thank the town council for allowing us the opportunity to speak tonight and for helping raise awareness of challenges and opportunities facing the preschool program. I would also like to thank our incredible community. The outpouring of support over the past week has been overwhelming, to say the least, and deeply appreciated. Since launching our fundraising efforts, we have raised close to $12,000, which is 40% of our fundraising goal of $30,000. This support demonstrates just how much this community values early childhood education and the importance of keeping quality preschool opportunities available for our local families. We're also continuing to focus on our enrollment, which remains a critical part of the program's long-term sustainability. To help with these efforts, North Coast Children's Services will be hosting a community meeting on Thursday, June 11th at 1 p.m. here at Town Hall. They will provide information about the program, answer questions, offer enrollment packets, and assist families who may be interested in enrolling their children. While there is still work ahead of us, the progress made in such a short amount of time gives us hope. The community has shown up in a remarkable way, and we are grateful for every donation, every shared post, every conversation, and every family considering enrollment. As a site representative, I also have the opportunity to serve not only our classroom, but our broader community. If any council members have questions, concerns, or topics you would like me to bring forward to the final North Coast Children's Services policy meeting this Friday, please let me know. I would be honored to represent your voices and perspectives. I'm looking forward to updating everybody at the next council meeting on all of our progress with this program. And on behalf of San Mary Preschool, thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your belief in the future of our children. We hope that together we can continue to build momentum and keep this program driving for the families to depend on it. I also have our draft or letter of for a fundraiser. If you guys want a copy of it with our QR code, that links to our GoFundMe page.
And that's what I was going to ask, is if folks want to donate to the cause, then how would they?
Yes, I can email. I'm happy to share my contact, and I can directly call, email, or text those links. And everything is a tax deductible donation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Yes.
If I can add quickly, we did send out mailers today to the broader community, so people will receive that in their post office, their postal services with QR code about where to donate.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All right. Any other items from the floor? Other items that are not on tonight's agenda? And we will talk about Simon Berry a little bit in the budget, but because it's kind of a separate discussion, I think that's good to put it as items from the floor. Also, so they don't have to wait for us to go through the budget for 2 hours. Okay, I think that's it then for items from the floor. So I'm going to move us along to tonight's consent agenda. So council, any questions on or anything that needs to be pulled from consent? Okay, members of the public, anyone see anything on the consent agenda that you would request us to discuss in more detail? Right, back to the council for a motion then.
Although I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second that. Okay, all those in favor? So moved. And that brings us then to the meat of tonight's discussion, which is really the discussion decision regarding resolution 2026-06, adopting the FY 26-27 budget for the city. And Gabe is going to lead us through a presentation and some really good detailed information.
Get queued up here. I'm gonna have a couple of screens going at the same time, so bear with me for a second. Oh, yeah, move that. Well, first of all, I guess what I'll say is initial disclaimer, which is it's always fun to run through the numbers of the city, to be able to read the city's story through numbers, to be able to be in a position, given the confidence, by the city to be able to do this project. And it takes a little bit of, you gotta be a fortune teller, you gotta be a historian, you gotta be a little bit of a gambler, and you gotta be really confident with your estimations, especially when you're trying to make projections for the upcoming year. It takes quite a bit of communication with staff, understanding what's happening in the city, but it's also it's a roadmap, it's a plan, and it can certainly change. So, the proposal that we have tonight, I guess the one thing I can say off the top of my head that caught my attention was this: we finally broke the $1 million mark. This is the first time I think $1 million general fund expense revenues are really close to that, as you may or may not know, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I've always been really, especially in meetings with other city staff, I like the idea of a 6-digit, budget, even though we have multi-million-dollar grants going at times. The general fund budget's always been under $1 million. Usually, if you're not at $1 million mark, a lot of cities just they don't want to talk to you, But we just recently, with this budget, it's anticipated we'll hit $1 million. So anyway, a little bit of the background on our budget structure, just so we can take a step back. I don't want to go too far back, but I definitely, it's always important for anybody listening to understand our budget structure. The city's budget is structured with various revenue sources and expense categories that some of them can be intermingled and some of them cannot. So your special revenues, such as gas tax, your TDA funds, those are street funds, and those can only be used for streets, roads, projects, and some of them can't even be used for labor. They have to be used for materials and construction. Your general fund, which is made out of revenues that are discretionarily spent, such as sales taxes, property taxes, and occupancy taxes. Your general fund revenues are made of those sources, and it's broken down into 4 categories: the administration, public works, police, fire, enterprise funds, integrated waste management. Sorry, there's a typo in there. That's not necessarily an enterprise fund per se. We've moved it and we've done that with great confidence. Sort of merge those revenues into the general fund casually. They're basically made up of the franchise fees that we receive from Humboldt Sanitation, kickbacks for use of the streets and roads, and to pick up garbage and to have that exclusive ride in Trinidad. We have a water fund, as you know, we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. We got a cemetery fund that is generally designed, and we want it to be designed to be able to sustain itself. So we account for those monies separately. And then we have grant funding projects, long-range planning, infrastructure projects. Currently, we've only got about 3 of them, I think, in the works. COPS funding is the money that we receive from the federal government to pay for our public safety programs. And at this point, we're making enough money in the COPS grant to cover all of our public safety needs. So the revenue sources, again, the general fund's made up of property tax, sales tax, occupancy tax, rents and franchise fees, fees for services, enterprise funds, ratepayer funded kickbacks to the city of Trinidad in the form of franchise fee. Water, obviously, ratepayer funded, cemetery plots, ratepayer funded, or sales funded. And then our special revenues, COPS, gas tax, and TDA are so funds that we account for. So the city's chart of accounts is quite large. There's at least, I think, 7 or 8 separate funds, some of them with sub-funds. And we keep track of all these separately. You see those in your financial statements every month when you thumb through. If you look at our financials, you'll see the separate accounting for all those funds. But how do you look at the whole city budget with, on a budget, on an individual fund by fund basis? It's sometimes it doesn't paint the picture that you really want to see, which is what is your bottom line. So the revenue sources, for instance, property taxes. Right now, the property tax revenue is the lowest of the 3 big revenues that we receive. Sales tax and occupancy taxes are in that order, number 1 and number 2. And then property taxes are 3rd revenue source. As you can see, many of the neighboring agencies and cities in this county have sales tax rates that are none below Trinidad's anymore. We used to be the city that had the highest sales tax rate, and that no longer is the case. We were often criticized in those early days back in 2004-5. We initiated our first sales tax revenue, and no one was going to shop here because our sales tax rate was too high. But as you can see, times have changed. This is the anatomy of your sales tax rate in the city of Trinidad. This California sales retail sales rate is 7.25. Then there's a Measure Z add-on, 0.5, a Measure O for roads that was recently adopted by the county, all voters, 1%, and then Trinidad's district rate. And we are in year 2 of this sales tax rate that was re-implemented by the city on April 1st. Actually, November 2024 general election, but it was re-initiated following that election on April 1st. So we're in 1 year, a little over a year in a 4-year. And usually within that 1 to 2 years, you can budget confidently, but once you get to the 2nd and 3rd year, you just don't know. So it's very difficult to make predictions until your voters get that interest in it. This is a pie chart of your revenue sources. If I can make that slightly bigger. As you can see from the pie, it's actually 2 sales tax. One of the sales tax is your general sales tax, and the other one is your add-on tax. So as you can see, they make up at least half of the pie of the city's revenues: property taxes, is just behind the occupancy tax rate. And I think this slide is from last year, and this occupancy taxes have gone up in terms of just through the prices of overnight stays. So the revenue has actually increased. It's probably more like 20% and 14% relative to property tax. I was discussing with the county auditor's office today. I wanted to understand the anatomy of property tax and how that works. And it's pretty mind-boggling to me how little property tax the city receives in revenue from each individual property. It's very small, very, very small. So I was pretty shocked, but I had a great talk with Grace Locker, I think her name is. She's the one that issues our property tax revenue checks to the city every year. So, you know, imagine $1 million home, 1% of that. We actually have a cost sharing agreement with the county that gives us only 28% of that 1%. And then there's also I forgot the acronym, but it's a statewide school program that then receives another 30% of that 28% of the 1%. So I think I calculated it's possible that the city, for a home valued at approximately assessed, not real estate value, but assessed value, could potentially, you know, maybe the city would receive less than $1,000 a year. Just for understanding. And I was diving deep into that today because I really wanted to understand and be able to articulate to you what of the new homes that are being built in Trinidad that have been, you know, I think our former city manager was getting really excited about those homes and, you know, what that might mean to our bottom line from a property tax revenue perspective. And I pretty much came out flatlined. I have no excitement for that whatsoever, to be honest. It's every dollar is appreciated, but I thought it was going to move the needle in some direction, but it's so the general fund, you know, cutting straight to the chase, the general fund revenue projection this year is up on the screen there, 967,723. And our operating expenses are a little over $1 million, as I mentioned before. And that difference being 73,360. So essentially this year, a slight operating deficit is the plan. As we talked about at the last month's meeting, we have our reserves. Again, this is from June 30th, 2025. So we've had a year go by. Our total fund balance in our reserve fund is a little over 2.2 million. And it's identified in the following categories, which the categories are important. So I'm going to touch on those here in a few minutes when I explain fund by fund how these reserves are there for a reason, and how over a number of years in the past, there's been a trend of building those reserves. And these reserves were built based on some conservative revenue projections that came out slightly ahead, but also some underspending, some missed targets in terms of the things that we wanted to do for ourselves as a city that we didn't have either the bandwidth, staffing, or whatnot to do. So that fund continued to build, and it built to, let's see, to what I'm anticipating this year. So the general fund reserves balance as of June 30, 2026, again, at the top, I've got 2.24 million in reserves. But then I go on to explain how we use those reserves this past year. We use intentionally by council action, we use them to work on the town hall, the windows and paint. And those came from our capital improvement reserve strategically and on purpose. We also used $18,800 for our CSA fire planning study. And that came from the fire department capital reserve, which currently has about $50,400. So those reserve expenses were used for the purposes they were intended. It wasn't a surprise. The one that was a bit of a surprise is the lawsuit trial costs. Of course, I do believe that we have a very good city attorney whose rates are very reasonable, and I look at all the invoices and I'm just shocked at how much time these things take to suss out. And I know this was not a surprise when we were anticipating this trial to begin, but I thought it was really important to understand because a year ago when we did the budget, we did not expect that trial. Well, I think we knew it was pending, we just didn't know it was going to happen. So when we look at our budget reserves from this past year, it wasn't anticipated that we would spend at least $70,000 on this trial in the last, several months. And that didn't account for the city engineer's time, which wasn't a whole lot, but it's a very high rate. And then all of our time, my time, staff time dedicated. So I estimated about $30,000 that would be coming from the unassigned fund balance. Again, if you go back to this chart, you'll see down here the unassigned fund balance. And I'm saying approximately 30,000 because of the extra overage that went unanticipated when we did the budget for the city attorney and the city planner. We did not anticipate the trial, and the amount remaining we're going to pull approximately $30,000 from the unassigned reserve. So ending fiscal year June 30th, 2026, without having the audited fund balances that we're still waiting for, I'm anticipating use of a total of all three of these figures and a $2,052,932 balance to remain. And again, these will all be verified when we do our audit.
And I think we talked about this last year, but general fund reserves generally, want to cover at least a year or two. So if our revenues per year are about $1 million now, and that's 2 years worth of reserve, right? If we had no money.
Rule of thumb,
yeah,
is typically a 6 months of your operating expenses is a healthy reserve. So
yeah, so this is 4 times that. So that's good. Good job. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's taken years to build, but it also was a lot of good decision making by councils prior, a lot of hard decisions, a lot of hard work to continue confidence in the sales tax that the seem to have still. Despite some of the losses in our other special revenue funds, the general fund still remains very healthy. So again, talking a little bit about the general fund divisions, there are admin, which we refer to as 201. It covers the majority of the portion of the city manager, assistant city manager clerk, administrative support salaries. It also covers a majority of the contract planner, building official, and your city attorney fees. The only time city planner or any other contract consultants' fees are not covered in admin. They're used for very specific projects, and they would be covered under that same line item or category in a different fund. The costs in admin budget goes, so when you're looking at Fund 201, if you review our financial statements on a regular basis, you'll see that those costs are the costs that we consider keeping the lights on for our public buildings. It covers public utilities, office supplies, municipal code revisions, website hosting, tech support, and a wide variety of staffing primarily comes from that fund. We're anticipating a 5% budget increase in the general fund admin, which approximately looks like about $35,813. Last year, I looked at the numbers that we had. It was, I think, 3.5 or almost 4%. So this is kind of general when we're looking at cost of living increases and wages and so on and so forth. And the same goes for wages, health insurance benefits, and general insurances. Again, the $26,289 is a 5% increase figure within that $35,000 budget increase. And And I've made a note here because I'm like, keep coming back to this. This includes the fully funded contract city manager position that we currently are not have full, right? So the numbers that you're seeing tonight assume that position remains full or becomes full at some point in time. And it's a conservative strategy. Nobody's making any assumptions that there will or there won't be. We are budgeting it because that is our program, right? So $120,000 is that number. So I'm going to refer to that a couple of times here, just as sort of a reminder of how that position plays into these funds as we discuss the health of each one of these. So police 301, cops 303, those two funds, general fund police 301 is the discretionary fund. And in the past, it was used to account for monies that were spent on public safety when the cops funding didn't cover it all. And until the sheriff's office reassessed the way in which they calculate the contract fees for their contract cities, Blue Lake and City of Trinidad, we were using general fund monies, sometimes up to $100,000 additional dollars to cover our public safety needs, which at that time was not public Pacific Coast Security, it was just the sheriff. So we were spending upwards to $250,000 to $300,000 a year on public safety. So we are currently in a very good position with our public safety team, and we are not using 301 and putting discretionary general fund money into that fund. It partially about 13,000 is used to cover the contract city manager fee or costs. So at this point, you'll see that in that fund. But all in all, 303 cost funding coming from the federal government trickles down through the county into the states and cities' hands, covers all of our public safety needs, to the tune of about 18,917 in reserve. So we're saving that money even after our expenses, and we're building that for a second year. So we'll have continued reserves in the event we have a surprise increase from the county because they're having budget shortfalls and whatnot. So we're in a good space from a public safety perspective. And I don't know about you, but I hear quite a few comments on a regular basis about how the town feels very, very comfortable with our public safety program. Fire department, 401 covers the honorarium for our fire volunteer chief and assistant chief. And the plan for this year with fire is basically a status quo budget. That fund is where we embed our CERT expenses and our CERT public safety team funding needs, which I'll touch on those here in a bit. But I think this year we're in a good place. The budget from this current year looks a little exploded, and that's because we did use $18,800 from the capital reserves. We put that into fire to be able to fund the CSA 4 fire planning setup that we're currently partnering with LAFCO hosting and the city, let's see, Rancheria, West Haven Community Services District, I think Fort may be a part of, in California. So Public Works 501, that fund covers the majority portion of Public Works staff salaries who continue to perform, and I'll say this again, at a high output and efficient level right now. Those guys are really amazing what they're accomplishing, and I hear great comments about Trinidad Head, the trails, the vistas. I think we heard it at our last meeting, and I hear it on a regular basis. People are really digging the work that the Public Works guys are doing to landscape the town. And that's a big part of it. I mean, most of the time I see those guys from, I guess you could say, starting in March until September, they're usually covered in grass and dirt. And that's what they're doing on a regular basis. They're keeping our trails and they're keeping the town circulatable. They do a great job at it, among other things. That funds street lighting, trail, public building maintenance costs for the town hall, the library, the park, and the city annex. This includes all the toiletries, disposables, the consumables that we use, light bulbs, repairs to public buildings, You name it, that fund covers it. It's a flat budget anticipated this year, no grant funded payroll, which is kind of an important thing to note. This is going to be a year where, as you can see, as you'll see from our grant list, in years prior, we've had quite a bit of grant payroll allocation. We've talked a little bit about how this works for the city's advantage before, where we get these big capital improvement grants, and they help us pay for our staff time in various different capacities, whether it's physical work or if it's number crunching, grant administration. This is going to be a year where we do not have a lot of that grant payroll influx. And when that happens, you know, you got to brace for it, because those are also times where, like, for instance, we're advertising now for our grant coordinator position. So when that grant coordinator position comes on, we'll be really utilizing that position to look for new opportunities out there based on your priorities. So even though we don't have our hands full like we had for the last 2 years with the tank and pipe and intertype project, maybe not a lot of bandwidth to look for playground opportunities and equipment, we may now be able to do that. That is following your priority list and looking for ways we can help preserve the city's general fund by using grant programs to fund our programs. So again, no big exciting budget changes to the Public Works Fund this year. I did program, and this is discretionary. It's totally up to the council. Unfortunately, Councilmember Breckenridge is not here to speak on her behalf on this one, but we talked about it in May at our workshop meeting, and then I met with her with Public Works out front, and she and resident met with us and felt like the front of the town hall could be a lot better. I explained in detail, you know, what some of our desires are, you know, with regards to the plantings there, low maintenance. I gave her some parameters, you know, as far as like maybe some natives and things that we don't want to have to, you know, look like we neglected on a regular basis, things that just are generally comfortable in that spot. And she and her partner believed that we could do a lot better. So I asked her, you know, what she thought she might need, and she threw a number at me of about $3,500. I think it involved nuking everything that's there, and then bringing in some planter type, you know, maybe some of those livestock troughs, and then doing something exciting with maybe even moving water through a hose system that can sprinkle it for a while to get it started. So I said the best I could do is offer that as an opportunity for her and you to decide if that's what you want tonight. So it's been programmed into the budget, and upon approval of the budget, without any further discussion about this item, it would be essentially supported by council. But it's totally your call. We can get to that in a minute too. So reserve funding is going to cover any additional capital improvement expenses that are desired. And again, those are going to be projects that you've heard, probably Civic Club room improvements. And we'll talk about your desires. I think I'd like to know if that's something that you would like us to bring back and like us to coordinate, or maybe that just involves from different discussions with other community groups. But those expenditures have not been programmed in this budget on purpose. Those will be done on an a la carte basis.
I think there was a lot of deferred maintenance is the problem that we've had, right? So we had to do the, you know, the painting and replace all the windows. It was very expensive last year. And I don't know what the right price is for landscaping. You know, I get the inexpensive plants. So, you know, this seems like, you know, hopefully they can come in a little under that, but in terms of the Civic Club room and just, you know, sprucing up the interior now, I still think that's a good priority for us. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but, you know, this is just such a kind of a show place when people come to Trinidad. We do a lot of events in here, and, you know, we haven't been able to do the floors. We haven't been able to do, you know, kind of make it more acoustically pleasant for bands. And There are just some things like that, and the kitchen probably is overdue for an overhaul. So unfortunately, there's just been a lot of deferred maintenance. So we probably don't want to do it all at once because it's too much expenditure. But I don't know how you guys feel about work on the town hall, or if you have thoughts about that.
Well, of course we do. Certainly, yeah. Being as how there, if assuming there is enough money to keep it in decent condition, we should continue to attempt to do that, to the extent we can. So, reasonably frugal with it, but yeah, certainly have no objections. We are in the enviable position of having significant reserves. So we're in better shape than a lot of public agencies that I've heard about. So yeah, that's my feelings about that.
So is Katie volunteering to be the lead on that? Well, after looking at her yard, that should be in Sunset Magazine. I agree.
Her standards are pretty high.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, she volunteered. Public Works is gonna offer some of the heavy haul. Because like I said, she wants to just absolutely start over. And there's some things that are rooted in those openings that are rooted into the ground pretty well there. So the Public Works Department is gonna do some of the heavy lifting to get rid of the material, and then she's gonna help lead from that point. Yeah, I was a little bit, I told her, I said, look how pretty this looks. And she looks at me, she's like, you think this is so I mean, we obviously have,
Yeah.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the poppies. I said, are we gonna say, are the poppies ugly? We had a nice conversation, but she definitely has a pretty nice standard. So I imagine anything she does is gonna be very nice. And I didn't want to get into, which plants to pick. I just kind of set some of the ground rules in terms of what would be helpful for us, and then she seemed to say, okay, we can work with this. She and Deborah,
Yeah,
the wheels were turning.
You're right on about low maintenance, because you don't want to build something that's hard to maintain.
Or it only looks good for a couple of weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
Right. And then, or it makes us look like we're neglecting it, because right now you just turn an eye and then everything's there and it's in full and it's growing. It might not be looking super intentional, but nobody's saying, hey, you guys are neglecting this. The only time that happens is when it's growing out into the sidewalk so far that you can't pass. But anyway, I think she's got a good eye for that too. So I'm gathering that there's a sense for that project. And some town hall improvements, which I think I know who to speak with about that in terms of, I think it's the Civic Club. I can consult with as far as the room goes, and we can make a priority list of things that they might like to see. And we'll bring it back to you, of course, I threw in this slide for city planning. I thought it was, I was actually anticipating, right? And since we're on the topic of the general fund, I thought it would be, it caught my eye as I'm going down the financials, and I'm like, wow, look at the number here. We're breaching $100,000, and I've heard many times before that we can have a full-time plan, and maybe we need, right? And we're doing the RFQ right now for city planning services, and Trevor's made it very clear that SHN is going to be raising their rates. So immediately I got on the phone with Trevor, and I anticipated having this discussion. So I asked Trevor, and she and I put together this chart of planner expenses, so that you can see the categories of expenditures that that time has been allocated to. It's really important because these are expenses that, if you really dissect planning bills, you'll see there's a lot of different people on those bills. It's not just one person, right? And it's a lot of different specialists, and it's a lot of different people in different departments at SHN, because they're a whole operation over there. They got biologists and botanists, hydrologists, right? So for instance, the water sanitary survey in the left side about 9 o'clock there on the dial. That was a $10,000, almost $11,000 one-time expense. And that, humorously is a state mandate. We have to report on that in our annual water report to the state. The document that we have somehow for years been able to just retitle the file. And it was a letter, a memo from the city engineer that I think one of the operators 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago decided, hey, if I just put a file title watershed sanitary survey, which it was pretty accurate, submitted to the state, and we do our annual report every year. Who knows? They're probably not looking at it. Well, they didn't look at it, you know, and it didn't even catch our attention until we started having consultants help us with our reports when we lost our operator. So that's when it popped up. And
What is the sanitary?
it's an upstream watershed survey that of, you know, maybe potential water quality issues that might be occurring, right? So, you know, whether it be agriculture, sedimentation, you know, pollution of any kind. It's a little bit of a deep dive on a 5-year basis is when they require.
See what's going on.
To see what's going on upstream. So Joe and I, we kind of argued a little bit about this when, you know, I was like, just, they don't even look at these things, you know, but we decided, let's just get it done. And then it's done, and it's over. We want to do it for 5 years, maybe 10 years, depending on anyway, because we don't have a lot of change in our upper watershed. We don't have residential, a ton of residential properties. We don't have heavy industry, maybe logging. But anyway, we did it. It was a $11,000 expense nearly, but that showed up in the planner expenses, and it could skew, you know, one's analysis of that particular fund. So I thought this chart here was really helpful because, you know, permits, for instance, $30,900. Those are recoverable, and they are 100% recoverable. So that's not in the planner pie, so to speak. It's money that goes in and goes out. You see housing. Housing is a big anchor on this last year's work that our city planner did, $21,181 for. That's not going away. Apparently the state's housing mandates are so intense that, you know, Trevor's kind of shaking in her boots, like, what are we going to do about this? This is going to be another drain on the city's coffers, which is one of the categories we talked about, finding some specialized help to get through this this housing. I think it's a housing element maybe of the general plan.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a trial, you know, $10,000 something for the trial. So these are some, these are some of just some categories of how the city planner, which I always talk about the city having a big appetite for planning. You know, this is how some of the funds are spent. And it's actually an eye opener too, because now we can really look at this septic program, you know, the OWTS. You know, Trevor's got a lot of expertise. This is one of the areas where we're going to fine tune, sharpen our pencil, and see if we can. She's going to get help in her own office, some lower rate help to help facilitate these permits. And I think we can do better too in terms of how we perform some of the preliminary analysis on these permits that come through. And, you know, renewals are only $175, right? That's our fee schedule. And when we did our fee schedule update, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago for septic, there was a general understanding and approval of the council at the time saying, we know this is going to be a subsidized program. We can't expect everybody every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to fork over the costs that it takes sometimes to analyze their program. However, some septic systems are more complicated than others. So if that person pays $175 renewal fee, but then the person that's got a bulletproof brand new septic system submits $175, it might take 3 hours of complex time or 4 hours for somebody at Streamline or SHN to review a permit. And it might take 15, 20 minutes to review and issue the straightforward permit. So there is a bit of an inequity occurring. And these are things that we're going to start looking at now that we have this pie that we can dissect and see how we can maybe do a bit better. The general plan is something that I really just don't think it's ever going to go away, but we need to make it kind of move. And I heard that in terms of the planning priorities this year at that meeting. And I also heard that echoed by the city council that you want to see some progress. So that is our intent this year.
What's under the LCP update says GP slash, is that IP
General plan,
over on the right, the LCP update?
yeah,
What is IP?
that's a good question. Why don't I know that?
But I don't know,
Is it?
but I don't know if that's what IP stands for, but I don't know if that's what they mean by that.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I should know. I just assumed it was.
Yeah, I know they've been doing the updates on the general plan, which is overlaps with the LCP generally for us. I mean, this is really useful, this pie chart that shows the expenses, because I looked at the numbers of, like 122,000. And I thought that was for just, city planning, and I didn't factor into the fact that it's multiple projects. Some of them are reimbursable by grants and so forth. I just want to harken back and just remind the council that the Planning Commission chair did suggest in a couple of meetings ago to the council that we had not helped in the way that they were looking for, I guess, in terms of prioritizing tasks. And also, I think there was a potential budget request that I thought was going to be coming from the Planning Commission. They had a couple of meetings to discuss it, and there's some material in tonight's packet, but I didn't see a specific ask. So I reached out to Gabe and kind of said, what is the Planning Commission really looking for from the council? So I think we may need to have a joint meeting to prioritize, and I could talk about a bunch of their projects and offer my 2 cents here, but I think it'd be better if they were here and we all participated in that. But one of the things that occurred to me was, and I think the council should consider, not necessarily this year, but in the future potentially, is to have a staff level city planning role. It might be, part-time, so, working with SHN. I mean, I just think potentially for continuity, there is a risk. So Trevor is amazing and she has such a depth of, of knowledge, but she doesn't work for the city. She works for SHN. And I think having somebody that can be a liaison to city staff and who also could come up to speed and really get to know this stuff would be wise to consider. And also, might help with some of the short-term projects. Like, I don't know that it's a good use of Trevor's time, and I know she pulls other people in, but things like the OWTS and the zoning work and the permits and even supporting Angela on grants and things like that. Maybe there could be a person that kind of tackles those things. It's just something to consider. And then I think the council should meet with the Planning Commission. And I'd like to go a little deeper with them on these various projects, because there's a number of things on the list that I don't think are going to use a lot of time. Things like, the web. Let me give you an example. So the website updates, right? That's not the role of the Planning Commission. That's the role of the city staff as guided by the council. And the Title II digital accessibility rule that they're concerned about coming to fruition this year is actually, there was an extension to April 26, 2028 for small towns. So we've got some breathing room there. And I know Gabe is all over this. He's meeting with Civic Plus and so on and so forth. So I just think the council needs to sit down with the Planning Commission and kind of go through some of these things and say, you're worrying about things that you don't have to worry about and you don't need funding for. But these things over here, like the general plan, it is very expensive. In this, 3 years I was on the Planning Commission, and then they were working on it for 7 years before. Just think about the tens of thousands per year over the course of 10 or 20 years. So we've got to bring that to closure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fortunately, most of the expense of that is grant funded to the city. But
Much of it is.
A big impediment was the Coastal Commission policy that they didn't want to approve amendments to the plan one issue at a time.
That's
They
right.
wanted the whole thing submitted to them at once.
Yeah.
So it was just too much for us to be able to marshal. And now apparently they're much more amenable to considering one element at a time.
Yeah, bit by bit.
Bit
And
by bit.
that's really helpful.
So
Yeah.
hopefully that will be a game changer.
Yeah, those are great points. Yeah.
To answer your question about IP, it's the implementation plan,
Oh,
yeah.
the
Oh,
implement.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
How we're gonna
That
apply it.
makes more sense than
Implementation.
the other IP. Okay, anyway, so thanks for indulging me there, but I did want to recognize, I don't see anybody from
I
the planning.
support the idea of a joint meeting.
Yeah.
too. I did one once before and I thought it was good.
Yeah, I think we need to get to the bottom to what the concerns are. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So that's the planner. I thought that was, since it's one of the bigger expenses in our general fund admin budget, it stuck out. And I think we needed to talk.
One last comment.
Go for it.
Be sure that, the request for proposals or whatever is cast with a wide net.
Yeah.
To every possible entity or person that might be interested in working for the city. So we get the most advantage of it.
So, moving on. Staff organizational chart. This is what we're planning for. You can see that the city manager 0.75 full-time equivalent position is still in this budget. So we're operating with a budget with this structure in mind. Clerk, assistant city manager, myself there, special projects manager, grant administrator. We are recruiting. We opened the job, I believe it was about June 1st, and it's currently out in the ether being advertised, and I believe it closes June 19th. And we are hopeful that sometime in mid-July, we'll be possibly having interviews and we will get going on that position that has been vacant since it was decided we needed that position filled over a year ago. So that'll be exciting. So we got that position included in the budget. The admin assistant total 4.75 full-time equivalent is the number that we use. But remember, from a budgeting perspective, each one of these positions, even though we are each one equivalent full-time, our salaries are all divided amongst a lot of different funds. So from a fund perspective, the general fund itself, 2.67 full-time funded employees by this department, essentially the admin department, which is again made up of all the discretionary funds, sales tax, property taxes. So 2.67 funded by this department. And Public Works, we've got the maintenance supervisor, Kyle Shipman at 0.8, treatment op 1, Derek, or 2 and 2, Shadle and Brown, 1.8 coming from Public Works, but the equivalent there is, I think I lost Carl out here somewhere, but 2.48 full-time equivalent funded because I think the city manager is also funded. When I have that number next to it, 2.84 full-time funded. Other salaries of other staff members, not just Public Works, are covered by the Public Works Fund. Our organizational chart for the water department continued. We currently, this is exciting. I'll tell you a little story about what happened last week if you don't already know. So our chief plan operator, currently a consultant being paid $4,000 a month. I'm anticipating a transitional 2-3 months from now. So Carl Anders, our current tested T3 operator, who I was at a craft baseball game, and Carl and I were sitting there about 2.5 years ago. I had a pair of St. Louis Cardinal socks on. I'm a fan. And Carl pulled over next to the bleachers next to me, and we started talking. And he's like, "You're a Cardinals fan?" He's like, "Me too." Next thing you know, we're talking about life and the change in fishing, because he was a commercial fisherman. I know him for years. And he's like, "Man, I haven't seen you in a long time." So we're sitting there at the Craft ballpark talking baseball. And he asked me about the city of Trinidad. He heard that there's people that are needed in the water fund, the water department. And I said, "Let's get your application and let's go." I know that he lives in town here or just outside the city limits. I know he was a commercial fisherman and I know he was having a hard time with that. He's a tall guy. He had some back issues. He says, man, I can't be working in commercial fishing anymore. So I said, hey, come apply for a job. Take the test. You're a water guy. You're a fisheries guy. You can do this. Lo and behold, he's working for the city. We hired him as one of our bench guys soon after that, as soon as he passed his first test. Long story short, he's made it through the system. He's tested up on T2, distribution 2. He passed his T3 test. A month ago, after he passed his T3 test, he submitted his letter to the state to get his license. He was so excited. The state said, not so fast. You owe us another 1,800 hours. The 1,800 that you put in was good, but we want another 1,800 experience. So that kind of killed the buzz. Next thing you know, he writes a letter that says, hey, no, I gotta, this is crazy. I've been working here.
Yes.
Yeah. So the state guy wrote a letter back to him and said, hey, okay, fine. 750. We'll half. We want half. So as of last week, we were budgeting for him to be T3 tested, T2 licensed for the next 6 months. I had that meeting with you, Cheryl and Bryce, on Tuesday. I walk into the office after that meeting and Carl's got the laminator out. And I'm like, what are you laminating? I said, I'm laminating my teeth, my license. And I said, well, how'd that happen? He goes, I just came from the post office. Thought it was sitting in there. So here we go. He's got his license. So lo and behold, the state granted him his license because of the protest letter that he wrote saying, hey, I have a degree in fisheries biology and why not?
Yeah, good for him for challenging it.
You wait a minute and,
Yeah.
you know, things change. So for a whole month, I was planning for the next 6 months at least with our contract operator, who, by the way, has said that he's got to leave us in a couple of months because he thinks he's going to get a job as an assistant manager as the deals route.
So this was timely.
So anyway, long story short, we finally have our in-house T3 out.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I
great.
noticed that in your report.
Oh, you saw that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of crazy how things work, but we're there. And we've got 2 other licensed operators that are T2, D2 certified, and Derek is expected to take his test in April. So
Yeah, great job.
really exciting.
Great job recruiting and building the bench.
Right now, we did it, and it's really exciting. And he just was doing his thing. I'm like, what are you laminating? And he's like, my license.
Maybe-
I came straight here from the post office.
Maybe there's a
Half time. He's gonna be half time.
Well, yeah. So right now, at the same time I was talking to him, I had a meeting with Michiko Maris, the general manager of Humboldt Bay, and the guys have really been wanting to take a tour of the Humboldt Bay plant system not because of any future discussions we're having necessarily about water, but the profession of water, how things look at other plants sometimes give you really good perspective as to what we need to be doing to make our system better. So I was talking to her and I set up a meeting. We're going to meet with Humboldt Bay. I'm taking the guys on a tour down there with Michiko on July, I think 14th or the 17th is the flight. At 9 a.m. We're going to go tour the Essex plant and then we're going to tour their facilities.
Nice.
So one of the things I talked to her about before I found out Carl had his license was what can we do to work with you guys to network so we can, because we might be losing our contract operator. And she's like, mutual aid, we'll help you whatever you need, So that is part of our conversation. We're going to be taking the tour, but Carl, I believe he's tested up, he's licensed. The state said go for it. He's our guy. But we do, I have had some conversations with him, and there are some things that he doesn't have a lot of experience. For instance, if we have an emergency, what happens next? He's going to be relying on me and other. We're going to be looking to get help from our friends at Humboldt Bay and the other people that we've worked with in the past.
Or do some pre-incident planning.
Exactly.
What are we gonna do if this happens? Let's have a plan.
Sure. So I want to help these guys who are young, up and coming T3 operators build a network so that they can make phone calls. Anytime something happens, then these operators will respond and help us out at a low cost because our water fund is off the ICU, but in transitional care. So
Limp it well.
So anyway, this breakdown above 1.7 full-time employees, 2.75 department funded. The number 2.75 department funded is really interesting because it tells me that, you know, if we would need 2.75 full-time employees to run everything top to bottom of the tree, right? That's administrative, that's billing, that's running the plant and having somebody there in the evenings. But in all reality, that's not the case. You need redundancy, you need backup. So the numbers that you see in this column, 0.5, 0.2, 0.5, that's how they're funded, not how their employment is with the city, right? They're funded 0.5 of, for
I
instance,
see, okay.
yep, 0.5 of 1. So he's half-time. Kyle, supervisor, 0.2 of his salary, he's a full-time employee, is funded by the water fund. So these are numbers that are based on studies that we do, time studies, to understand how much and where they put their time.
Yeah.
And it was very important that we got these numbers straight when we were running on fumes with the water fund. You know, so we really refine these numbers and we try to do it at least once a year. Seasonally, if possible, because the seasons change. You know, one season you're working more in water and more in less in public works, and then vice versa. So the proposed staff for fiscal year 2027, 8.18 employees, 9 employees total, including the contract CM. And the estimated payroll projection is 866,628. Only 42,533 is going to be covered by grants, and years prior it's quite a bit more, but this is going to be one of those bridge years potentially, depending on what kind of work and what kind of grants come down the pipeline. There's a lot of money in climate resiliency, so we're anticipating that is going to be a priority of ours this year, to look at your priorities and see which one of those priorities fit in the climate resiliency. I mean, I've heard everything from, you know, solar arrays up at the tank sites, you know, so that we can have more. I think Councilmember Tuttle brought that up. Like we should be able to get power up there somehow, so we can get more up to the minute communications. So and valving up there, emergency closure valving, things like that. So we're going to be looking to those funds, but this year is going to be a low year in terms of what's covered by grants, because we just don't have millions of dollars for grants this year, including quite a few.
Yeah.
Leaving 824,000, a little over 824,000 to be paid for the general special revenue and enterprise funds. The salary phase 2 alignment that you kind of agreed to in general, the concept of the last meeting, the estimated increase in payroll is about 54,246 across the board. And again, that's split 65-35 roughly with the water fund, because that's about how our salary structure, our employment structure is set up with regards to salaries and apportionments. And the contract city manager position, just for instance, 87,546 comes from the general fund, with 43,120 coming from water. Those numbers are important because they'll ripple through as we kind of conclude some of our discussions here about at least my presentation. So as far as the operating fund of the water is concerned, I guess I'm switching from staffing to water real quick. Is that okay?
Sure.
Just roll. Okay. So the water fund, 10% rate increase every July. That's what our 5-year rate study proposed. And this will bring our base rate up to about $80. The water sales revenue is anticipated at about 463,000 this year. And some of the other categories of monies received in that fund, interest, penalties, and so on and so forth, $23,000. Most of that's interest earned by the fund that is currently being kept in our the connection fees. This is a big one. So I'm looking at property taxes to see how these new houses are going to affect the city's bottom line. When we're talking about annexation, we're talking about all these different ways that the city might need to grow, or the growing pains that the city's having with regards to what we need to do, what we don't need to do. Connection fees. We're going to receive $37,000 in connection fees from the 2 that are up on Mill Creek, anticipated this year that was approved by LAFCO, and then the 5 over off of the housing project. So those connection fees suddenly have really helped our water fund this year, right? One-time help to the tune of our total revenue projections being $523,439. Now, as far as how these connections then affect our bottom line moving forward with regards to monthly fees, I've projected with the $80 base rate times 12 months, $961.20 times 9 connections. That's $8,650 coming in a new water customers, assuming, and that's just assuming it's the base rate, right? That's not including any additional revenues. That's base rate, 0 water use. So in terms of growth, and I don't know if growth is really the right word here, but this was the first time that in my years of doing the budgets, we've never had anything like this before. You know, I mean, 1 connection every 5 to 7 years is like a miracle. We also have 2, one on Berry Road that already has been initiated, and one on Underwood that we just placed a meter for. So these revenues really help. When you're just stagnant for so long, everybody pays more and more and more and more. So although the $37,500 is a 1-year shot infusion, it does very much help the city in terms of how it moves through the series of the 5-year rate projections, where every year 10% on top of 10% on top of 10%, right? So what this tells us, and first of all, I'll talk about the expenses relative to those revenues, which the $523,000 number does not include the $8650, does not include the expected revenue, because we can't say exactly when those are going to come online, but we know they're going to happen this year. We are projecting a 22% decrease in water expenses this year, which is part of the sharpening of the pencil when we approved our rates. We're decreasing our dependency on the contract operator now suddenly in this transition. Hopefully everything goes really well with Mr. Anderson in his discussions with the city. But so the net gain, 34,267. The capital reserve fund are still underfunded by $112,000, right? So these are operating revenues and expenses, not the additional money that needs to go into the system to build to pay for reserves later. So when I say small net gain, the rate study anticipated $148,000. It's expecting in a healthy scenario. That kind of money needs to be put in our water fund, back into the water fund to build those reserves. So when I say we have a small net gain of 34,267, that's the bottom line of the cash flow. But we still are underfunding the capital reserves. Now, water fund's out of the ICU, but remains in transitional care. To go back to that current city manager contract salary, $43,000 additional dollars. You see how that kind of factors in. All of a sudden, it's $34,000 plus $43,000 if that position is unfilled this year. I'm just kind of trying to paint a picture of how that position is pretty critical to the bottom line because it's the lowest hanging fruit, right? Currently. So, anybody have any questions about the water fund? This slide.
Can we add more water customers? Like, can we reach out to neighboring areas that are just on wells and bring them on board?
Well,
Joe could probably.
Within our service area, you know, everybody's eligible who's within our service area.
Are there people in our service area that we're not connected to yet?
Oh,
Yeah. But it's, you know, we get into the LAFCO kind of side of things where, right. So it has to be approved by LAFCO. If it's outside, even though it's in our service area, that's what happened with the 2 connections up on.
Great.
Thank you. You know, we had to actually take that all the way. It took several years to get it approved. And then we had to take it to the LAFCO board to get them to approve it. And they only approved it with the caveat that the city will actually look at annexing that street. So, so if we, for example, went over to Langford and said, you know, if Langford's in our service area and there's some people on wells and they apply, then we'd probably have to go back to LAFCO again. So it's not a slam dunk, but it's much easier to Bryce's point if it's in our service area, but it's still,
They're at least eligible.
yeah, they're at least eligible, but it's a process.
What if we added ADUs in the community? Would they all have to have their own service meter?
They would, yes.
Yeah, that would grow it for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So the water rate study. So, you know, we had the mama bear, papa bear, baby bear options, and the council chose the mama bear option B because we thought, you know, well, we're going to kind of force a forcing function to keep our costs down and not raise rates too much for the community. But when I look at the fact that we're underfunding our capital reserves, that makes me nervous with an aging plant.
Mhm.
So maybe the council should consider revisiting the water rates in the next, you know, 6 months to a year.
The thing is about the capital reserves is those kind of expenses are the ones where the grants come in. You don't have the money to
That's true.
fix your system or improve it up to the new standards. So on the one hand, in a perfect world, it would be great to always have money set aside for depreciation and all that.
Yeah.
The reality is, I don't think very many agencies actually do.
Is there money?
Trinidad.
Yeah, that's a good point. So,
But the world keeps spinning,
mhm.
you know, so if we have to be short on something, I think that aspect is one of the safer things, you know, where we're not quite putting enough money aside for. Because absent, you know, a major seismic shift in the structure of government, taxation and everything in California and this country, we will, you know, there will be money available
For capital.
if-
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, for major capital improvement. Or low interest loans,
Yeah.
super low interest loans.
Okay.
And we've used those before, Trinidad has. You pay back to the website. Just a thought.
No, it's good. I think I'll bring that flying, but get it later.
So we're hoping for a net gain. We're hoping for a net gain, but and I did include in the water fund some contingency money for leaks. As we learned this year, we've had some big leaks, but hopefully not on Scenic Drive where
That's a good thing.
GRS is working on.
Great work.
I know. Some valve replacements so that we can turn water off and we can isolate parts of the system that we learned the hard way this last April that we couldn't isolate. Or that we could isolate, but we couldn't provide people water at that time for an extended period. So there's some money available programmed in the fund, even with the small net gain to be realized. So the water fund looks, again, like another transitional year. We're going to keep a close eye on things. We're going to get the results. Hopefully now that we have this fund, now that I've done the deep dive, we've done the deep dive into this fund, and now I know what to project. So when we started the analysis with RCAC, they were noticing some major variances in the financials that we gave them from the last year and a half. And they were like, why is this? If we just apply our 10% increase to each one of these funds in your category, your expense category, then why is the contracted services 140,000? I thought you said they were going to be lower, you know? So I had to really analyze each one of those expense categories to find out what was in there one time, what was in there from an emergency, what was in there for, you know, this and that and the other. And now that we've done that work, we'll hand it back to RCAC based on the assumptions that we've made in this budget and knowing what we know about Carl now. So that'll help a lot. And I intend to bring that back to you in July. And they can get their work done. If that month works, if we have our meeting, then I'd like to return to that information because that does project out through the rate study duration. 5 years. So the next 3 years will be projected and we'll be able to have hopefully a clear picture of what comes. So I'll be returning with more. Oh, water fund reserves. Yeah, so again, here's a slide that I kept in there from prior years. You can see how it just sort of kept this, the reserves were being depleted. But I also want to point out how the analysis and projections that we've done so far showed this fiscal year we are potentially in a loss currently 2026. Which, when you get into another loss in the water fund, it's not much. It's like $40,000, of course, underfunded all the capital reserves, but it's still about $30,000 or $40,000 overspent. We don't have the financials yet for this current fiscal year. It's not over yet, but we're anticipating a loss. When you get into the loss, you start to wonder, okay, well, the city gave $300,000 to the general fund, but then it made a promise of another $300,000 loan. We don't want to get into a loan situation. We don't want to have to do any of that anymore if we don't have to. So, with the positive gained potentially this year coming, if things stay on track, we could potentially wash the prior year $40,000 approximate, the current year approximate loss once we figure this out. So formally, we have to address these things from a auditing perspective. We have to pass resolutions and say, okay, we're going to do a loan from this to, we're going to have a 0 interest loan or a 1% loan or whatever. But I'm thinking that if it's going to be a few months before we get the audited financials for this year, and by that time, we're going to be able to maybe see the light as to where we're heading in this fund for this current year, minus winter chaos, whatever that might happen with regards to the water plant. But what I want to point out again is a couple of those bullets down there. Where the variables are including, I put 6,500 with 3/4 of the year for the new connections. That is the base rate. Because I projected 8,700 something for a full year, but my guess is we're going to have these meters installed before the end of this fall, before the end of September for all these 7 connections. And as soon as they're installed, they start paying base rate. So the variables to that 34,000 include that, plus the 43,120 portion of the city manager recruitment status. We don't know when that's going to happen, if it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, but we are going to have discussions about that part of our staffing structure in July, and we're going to continue in September. So we'll have a little bit more of an idea on what we're going to do with that position and how we're going to do it. But it also depends on the T3 CPO in-house transition. Longevity, got to have that conversation because it's been pending, but he got his license up, and now we got to get real and we got to talk. And the other variable is distribution system or water plant emergency. So that's where this fund currently stands. Hopefully I made it clear enough. It was very challenging to come up with the assumptions, but I feel like when the audit is performed, it'll verify things that are currently in play from 2025 and now. I think we're going to be pretty accurate. Speeding right along, goals and highlights for the water fund, transitioning to T3, continue training and retaining our in-house licensed operators who are doing a great job learning every day. Continue and conclude the rate analysis and a plan for a possible three-year follow-up rate study. Replace valves, prepare for short-term emergencies, plan and support long-range projects such as radio read meters and the TA comparative analysis grant. We are meeting, staff is going to meet with a specialist at GHD that has helped with these transition to radio read meters, so smart meters. We're going to meet with, I think it's later this month. That's one thing I thought we would could do better, because all the meters are our cash registers. And if you do if you just look at Google and you search, water meter replacements, you'll see that, they should be replaced a lot more frequent than ours are, refreshed, because they're your cash registers. And we're overdue. We're overdue. Those are some of the goals and highlights. And again, this is a presentation. A lot of this stuff is included in the narrative documents that are included in the budget, and those narratives again set the stage for us to continue to refer back to throughout the year to make sure that what you're approving tonight, whatever those priorities are executed. grants in progress. You can't read this slide, but it's in the packet. It's the LCP Coastal Commission. This is kind of a drought year for grants for a change. It's kind of nice. We needed a little break to do some housekeeping. I don't know if Angela, he's nodding her head. And also it's exciting because we get to look at new stuff, and I don't mean, just unnecessary grants, but following your priorities. Hunting down grant programs that match those priorities, not our priorities per se, but your. We've heard from the community in the past. I've heard many times, we don't need to get a grant just for a grant's sake. It's not something that we really are in the business of doing to support jobs. We're in the business of supporting our council. So the LCP grant update, the calorie cycle, 13, I think that's edible food waste. Is that what that is? Edible food waste grant, and then the other one is the STIP action point, and Main Street repavement project. Those are all, that one's about ready to kick off here in a couple of weeks.
I don't know if this is a good place to ask. I should have asked before, I guess, but the culvert on Scenic, where is that going?
So the culvert on Scenic, if I'm not mistaken, is over off of the driveway coming off of the Lighthouse, the pizza, Hetty's Pizza. When you're exiting the shopping center from that area, from that on Scenic, from that point, there's a culvert under the road there, under the driveway on Scenic city property that's completely smashed because cars have cut in that corner so many times. It's only a small,
Pardon, baby?
but it's
That's what he's talking about.
Oh.
Okay.
That's run over.
it's run over and it's been smashed for a while and it's so it's smashed and it's been on our list for a while. The property owner of the shopping center has been bugging us about it for about 2 years now, especially when we have big heavy flow years. He's like, you're washing out the driveway. We don't get that fixed.
Okay.
So yeah, it connects to a larger Caltrans storm drain that comes for the interchange and goes down into the creek there. So let's see. So the goals and highlights. You know what? Let me do this. Couple. I'm going to skip around real quick, and I'll hopefully be able to wrap this up in just a minute and hand the floor to you. But goals and highlights, capital improvement projects. I listed a few here, and again, these are our roadmaps for the year. Tennis court resurfacing, town hall interior improvement, maybe some paint, maybe a floor, and then the civic club room. Those are some ticket items that I know have been part of prior discussions. They're lingering, they're not done yet. And then resolving the boardwalk project and the land tenure issue at the Rancheria. If you have anything else that you want to add to that, now would be a good time, although it's not the only time. Add anything anytime you want, but
This is a lot. So to get done, it might even have to be, the town hall piece might have to be spread out over a few years. I don't know.
Yeah.
Depending on your funding.
any priorities? Any thoughts about maybe?
I brought up the tennis court last time. That's kind of a minor thing, but because we had the grant and we weren't able to use it because folks didn't want pickleball, and because we continue to hear about the crack, and it's, it just seems like, something people really enjoy. They love to come and play tennis, and it's our only, entertainment item for outdoors. I'd kind of like to see it just get done.
20,000. I think there's a document in the packet. I threw a bunch in the packet
Yeah.
of the supporting documents. I don't know if you saw that, but it was an email from 2021, I think.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be different, but that just to give you an idea of what the roads were.
Gonna be lower. Or not.
Yeah, somebody said, I've heard both higher and I thought it would be lower.
Yeah.
If 20 is what it is, I guess. Yeah. If 20 is what it is, I guess. We don't have to do it very often, obviously. So, I think it'd be kind of a nice thing. I think the community appreciates that when we put a little investment into making things look nice, and make them work, usable. So.
Certainly the tennis playing community
Certainly they do.
appreciates the quality of the sport.
Yeah.
I'm switching gears a little bit from that presentation to the packet, just so you can see what you're approving tonight, but I want to make clear that the expenses listed in the itemized fund budgets are very, but some of the narrative in this 5-page an opening to the resolution, which then is followed by the budget pages itself. Like a lot of our marching orders are embedded in there. Everything we just discussed, stuff that you've shaped our minds with in terms of how we've gone about our business, learned from our emergencies, are in that document to help us kind of drive and steer this year in terms of being able to come back every couple of months and make sure that we're checking the box. So if there's anything else you think would be important that we missed, now would be a good time. And also this document right here, this budget summary, and I'm going to put it up on the screen. It does sort of give us a nice snapshot as to what we're expecting to occur, how we're expecting it to occur, the funds that we're expecting to come and go from the system. But the highlights below, which I've thrown up on the screen, there's a lot of meat in here that is going to be a challenge to attack and to accomplish, but it's all doable. And there's some very clear instructions. I think Mayor Kelly said it's the ADA mandated website, even in this document down below. These are the things that we're going to constantly refer back to, especially when we get distracted by other things. We're going to keep coming back to this, saying, this is what was approved. This is what our council wants us to accomplish. And let's stick with these priorities before we get too carried away with others.
So there was an ask for the library, and I see that that's in here, that's coming out of the general fund. So that was for, I believe, 4 hours a week additional staff. Is that right?
Yeah. So increased support for library to cover Friends of Library share for the extended hours. That is those 4 hours that per week that was agreed to years ago by the Friends of the Library to cover 60-40 split with the city. We paid 40%, they paid 60%. They have expressed to us that they just aren't in the fundraising capacity that they had in the past, and they would like the city to consider covering those costs. And our share of that used to be about $700, and they would cover $1,500, $1,400, estimated on a regular annual basis. So now I think with the costs going up and everything, I've programmed about 4,000 total for the city to cover. And that is included in I believe it's the general fund admin budget. It's embedded in that spreadsheet. And if you make the print a little bigger, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to call that out because we talked about it last time, and I just want to make sure the rest of the council knew that that was factored in. And then some other new requests, we talked about cinnamon berries, so I think we need to talk about that.
There were like 4 requests, I think.
Yeah.
4 different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Support for the North, did you I'm sorry, I missed that. What were you talking about?
We were just talking about extra requests, like new requests, and the reason I called out the libraries because I could see that we budgeted in here, and I just wanted to see, give an answer, I guess, to the other requests.
Right. So if maybe I can take a stab at those requests. So one was CERT, right? And that's been included.
Yeah, CERT's included.
CERT's included. I think Richard Johnson gave a detailed itemized list of items. Wasn't that much?
No, it wasn't.
Right? But we lowered it based on your recommendation. I think I lowered it to 2,000 instead of 3,500.
I think it's still in here as 3,000, but you can lower it to 2.
I think the other 1,000 was for It's combined in the line item for fire department training.
Yeah, sorry.
So there's 1,000 for fire and then 2,000 for CERT. So that was one of them that was covered. The
Okay.
library covered.
Mhm.
I don't see another option at this point, the library. I
Yeah.
don't think the community wants the library closed, right? So, and I think that the Friends of the Library have not abandoned the ship, but they're definitely saying, if we get into a jam, can the city help cover that in a pinch? So that was included. North Coast Children's Services, I believe I spoke to Angela about this. It sounds like, and we heard from Rodney tonight, that they're still waiting to see what the enrollment looks like. They haven't closed the book on the enrollment yet. And I don't know if the deadline has been reached. So if that request has been tabled as far, I mean, we know it's there, it exists. They've expressed, a desire to have the city council consider.
Okay.
But I think the way we just looked at it was like, hey, they're raising all this money right now. Number one, maybe they'll meet their goals independently. Number two, maybe they'll meet their, isn't enrollment typically happen on a last minute basis a lot?
Yeah.
So, and the deadline around it is what?
I think truly there is a deadline for enrollment, but I feel like it started, so, or the month before, so it started in September, so you see a lot come in.
So I think it's not going away, it's just tabled forever. To see kind of a balance of enrollment versus fundraising, and then if there is any requests from the city, we could talk about that in perhaps in July as an addition. If that request still is on the table at the time.
Sorry, but
Yeah.
to add to that, the fundraising deadline is July 31st. So that will make that determination as how we proceed.
So we have a roadmap to not leave this request in the dust.
Okay.
I like to cover all the bases. And then the fourth one. I know those three.
Maybe there's three.
Yeah. I remember. But those were the three, so I feel like we've been responsive to all the.
Yeah, thank you.
Requests. And then just going down the list, public safety. I do have 3,000, sir. I didn't change this to 2,000 in this particular document, but in the general fund, in the fire department budget, it's itemized clear for coding purposes and such.
Trails, we used to allocate money to the trail committee. I don't know if it would make sense to allocate money to the management team, but the city kind of holds the budget.
Let's see.
Because there's no funding otherwise for any work that's being done.
There's $5,000 in this budget.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Trails.
Yeah, so we've got 5K. We used to do 10K.
Well, we haven't
a year,
spent the 10K.
but we didn't spend it. Yeah,
We haven't spent it in 3 years. This year we've only spent $35 in that category because of our, just trying to be realistic with the general fund. We can always add and move and change money. At any given time we get a request. I just didn't have anything really that just was like, in front of me saying, this is what we're gonna spend on that in that category this year. I didn't have anything. So if we do get something, we can make a budget amendment at any time.
Okay.
I've talked to, several people about it, and including Trevor, and I'm just not getting, no one's coming to me saying, don't forget, we gotta do this. And partially in terms of staffing, this money and this $5,000 right here is for material, supplies, and equipment typically, not necessarily staff time. So we're not abandoning, we've baked in consultant time, we baked in staff time to deal with these things at a coastal commission level or at a consulting level or a meeting level. We just didn't put any hard money in here for any improvements. Like, we need to repair some steps on the Van Wyck Trail.
For example. I've said.
Other
So-
comments from the council before I go to get any public feedback? Any questions, comments for Gabe?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
I was a little confused by the pie chart on the revenue, where sales tax is mentioned twice, 22%. each time?
One of those,
One's 1% or one's 0.75 or 1%.
the 1% is what Trinidad would get without its add-on 0.7. That's Trinidad's share of the
Of
Of
the
the-
assets collected.
of that anatomy right there of sales tax. So, you know, the city gets a portion of, there's the state retail sales tax of that 7.25.
Mhm.
Right, it gets its share. So for every person in town, in the 9570 zip code, but not really. In Trinidad's sales tax jurisdiction.
Mhm.
If Trinidad didn't have its own 0.75 add-on. And someone bought something, you bought something from Murphy's, there's a sales tax you pay. Trinidad gets a portion of that 7.25. That's the 1%
It's
shown.
1% of it. Okay, but the extra 0.75, you get all of that.
All of it. That's because that is our voter initiated measure to add on another 0.75. It's about equivalent.
And together, they account for 44%
They do.
of the budget. Run me through one more time the history of the cost, where that money came from and how long of a program that is.
That is. Probably what. It may have originated during the Clinton era, maybe even before that.
And so it's a federal program.
It's a federal program, yes. Citizen option for public safety. I don't know what riot or what caused, the federal government then to start heavily funding public safety. I have to go back, it was the 90s. I had a whole history on it. I think I presented probably in 2022 when I did the budget, or 2021. I just can't recall off the top of my head. I even have a document that explains the administration, the presidential administration that initiated that funding source. And so far, it's just been happening since as long as I can remember. Every year.
A consistent source.
And we've always budgeted about 150,000. Sometimes it's I've never seen it less than 150. Sometimes it's more. In this case, I think this last year we got about 160,000, 80,000. So every time we
There's
collect,
no reason to think it's going to continue.
not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I'm very confident in that funding source. I mean, current presidential administration is pretty volatile, but I do believe that public safety is.
They haven't gone after that.
They've gone after that one yet.
Okay.
I mean, maybe they would if we didn't like our governor enough, maybe, but I think this program is for all jurisdictions, not just.
Yeah. What, if you can recall, are we paying for the honorariums for our fire chief and assistant fire chief per month? Can you remember?
When
For the chief is what I heard.
500 for the chief
Right.
and the 150 for the fire chief, but it went up because our fire chief had that number for 25 years. He was getting 150 a month. So when the new fire chief took over, it's 500 a month. I think it's 75. Why do I know that? And the reason why I don't know off the top of my head is because the assistant fire chief has never asked for it
Doesn't collect.
and doesn't collect it.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. No assistant fire chief that I can remember has.
That's right. I think I was.
You were one of them.
I was one for a while. Yeah, I think I had any money either.
I don't think any fire chief has.
Get some of us.
Yeah. So and because our fire chief is a working person, not retired, it definitely. I think if I recall, it was $50 for the assistant chief.
Yeah.
It was 150 and 50.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
back in 2023, it was
Yeah.
150/50.
So now it's currently 500 budgeted for 50 for the assistant chief, which does, you know.
Are we gonna do anything special for our contract attorney budget? As far as possible litigation?
Excellent question. I think what we're gonna do with that one is, we have a line item in our budget to track that separately, litigation, which we haven't in the past, because we've always had the same attorney doing all the work for the city. And there hasn't been a real need because the record keeping is so good nowadays with Excel spreadsheets and bookkeeping that they do for the city. It's like, I can just call them up at any time and say, tell us how much you spent on the trial. So, you know, in prior decades, we had a separate line item for litigation versus general city attorney type activities in the city. And we tracked that on purpose because we had a heavy litigation era in the early 2000s. In this particular case, since we haven't even discussed, you know, rates, I'm assuming we get an office rate, you know, from our city attorney, but either way, with the new attorney, I didn't anticipate the litigation, any kind of a litigation, like immediately. I anticipated obviously a legal challenge, but not necessarily a trial. So I think what we're gonna do is activate that litigation line item so we can track things a little more carefully. Because it'll be a bill that has a different name, same partner, but different name theoretically if there is a need for additional.
If I understood the previous statement correctly, the ongoing attorney costs are part of the expenses. This is what it takes to keep the lights on.
Yes, in that budget, the admin budget, yes, you'll find it embedded in that spreadsheet.
And that was what, 30,000 or something?
60 total, 40,000, I think we had, this was something that, the former city manager did, and it's carried over, and you're seeing it now. You're seeing 40,000 for city attorney in one category, and then you're seeing 20,000 in the litigation category, which for all intents and purposes, I looked at that as a $60,000 city attorney budget. You're not gonna put a limit on, I mean, you like to put a limit on litigation, but litigation is what it is.
It's out of your hands.
It's out of your hands. So we just looked at it as a $60,000 city attorney anticipated assumption in the budget this past year, which we're well over that. We're into the hundreds. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll sort of activate coding expenses to the litigation fund or to the litigation expense code so that we can keep an eye on that.
Okay. I think that's the only question. Okay.
I have one quick question on that. CSA for fire study that we contributed $18,000 towards, and hopefully we don't have to contribute any more this year. Would there be somebody that could come and speak to the council about what's going on with that?
Definitely. Did they speak on that? Not sure. Did they mention anything? I haven't heard any updates.
They don't have any updates yet. I think they're still working on the study, but once the study is completed, then they'll come back and report. So I can't remember off the top of my head, I can't remember the timeline, but I think I asked it and they weren't sure.
Yeah.
So it was like, they were gonna nudge them and, you know, get it going and complete it, I think in the next 6 weeks to 3 months.
Yeah, we're not far out. It's been a while. They've had that in their hands for 4 months.
I guess the reason I'm asking is there some contribution we need to include for the city of Trinidad in that study that?
Not yet. For the implementation of the study, at some point, that would be another item that you would hear separate because our contribution has been made. That was a negotiated split between all the participating entities. And that was for the whole study. What happens after the study is completed is a different, that's a whole different negotiated.
Yeah,
Oh, I see. This is just a study.
yeah, there may be some significant financial
Output.
implications to the city, depending, you know,
Right.
Depending on the outcome.
what we decide to do.
Yeah. And I was thinking more or less, are there specific areas of concern that we need to bring to the attention of the study group that Trinidad needs to be maybe addressed in a study that may not be, because they're being overlooked because nobody's actually talking to them from
No.
Trinidad.
No, I think the people conducting the study will be reaching out to the Trinidad Fire Chief, for example, and Gabe probably
Yeah.
for information and data and filling in blanks for them so they get an understanding
Yeah, it's a
of
good
what the
point.
picture is here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they, we
they'll
did,
be-
yeah, we did provide the names at some point, all the members of the study that contributed also got to provide recommendations for who people should talk to. And they ended up being a pretty good sized list. I don't know if they'll get through all of it, but definitely at least a representative sample.
Okay.
And I can verify, I worked with Sean, and Sean worked with his volunteers to complete the initial questionnaire, which was several pages long, asked about stats, calls, apparatus. We completed that pretty thoroughly. And we actually completed it and sent it back in a timely manner. And we have not had any follow-up yet. So I think I'm sure that's going to be part of the process. I know CAL FIRE had a huge role in this because, you know, their dispatch handles a lot of the data analysis and domain data, but each entity that was involved, for instance, Trinidad Rancheria, you know, they don't necessarily have fire statistics. They don't keep that information. So there was some heavy output done by CAL FIRE, some admin output done by the county. West Haven and Trinidad contributed quite a bit of data, and we hope to continue, you know, being engaged.
Okay.
But we haven't heard anything yet from a company that's been hired to do more.
Okay, thanks.
Jack, do you have any questions or anything? Okay. All right, then I'm gonna go ahead and go to members of the public. If there's anyone that has a question or comment about the budget. All right, I don't see any hands raised or folks coming up to the podium in the room, so back to the council. So unless there's additional questions or comments, I guess would be looking for a motion regarding the budget.
I'd just like to make one more observation. It seems like, if I understand it correctly, a decision we have not yet made about structure of the city manager position will be to determine whether we end up actually with a $75,000 deficit or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, yes. Worst case scenario, not worst case, but possibility that we'll have a $75,000 shortfall. Depending on how we play our cards, as far as, you know. Yeah, who's gonna do what job and.
That's one. Again, that's the low hanging fruit. It's easy to kind of look at numbers and say, well, this general fund has an $87,000 price tag. This position has an $87,000 price tag for the general fund right now. Right, so it's easy to look at that $73,000 estimation. Again, it's based on liberal expenses and conservative revenues. So the $73,000 could be less, could be more. We've got some potential litigation issues that could drive up the price tag for what we currently budgeted for the city attorney.
Right.
If we don't sharpen our pencil with the planning expenses, then that could go up or down and can fluctuate. There's some
other things can go wrong.
there's some very easily easily somewhat assumed and predictable variables.
Mhm.
But that's one way I wanted you to be able to look at that.
That's a pretty big one.
It's a pretty big one. And it has not been discussed yet. It's programmed into the budget the way it is. That's how the structure has been staffing wise by the city of Trinidad for, the last number of years. We just passed our classification compensation study, which further sort of aligned the positions that are needed by the city and job descriptions to go with it. So it's not that the budget is it's not assuming anything other than this is what it looks like with that position funded and that fully that. We'll have more discussions about this in the next couple of months.
Okay, any further discussion then on the budget? All right, seeing none, I guess I will go ahead and move to approve resolution 2026-06 adopting the FY 26-27 budget.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor? Aye, so moved. Great job, Gabe.
Yeah.
Really
thanks,
good
Gabe, for
information.
everything. That was really great.
Yeah.
Good.
About something to Trevor too, but no, there was some really good information in here on the planning commission as well, so send for a note tomorrow. Right, so I guess next up is the calendar, this item number 2, the November 2026 City Council election calendar update.
So this one's just presentation real quick for anyone who's listening, interested in the position. I know there's somebody online there who I spoke to this morning about who knows somebody that's interested in this role of the city potentially. So
Great.
getting a lot of feedback. I'm receiving some back channel communications from people saying, hey, tell me more about this position. So city council, I hear there's quite a few seats on it. So ears are ringing. I don't know how the word's getting out. I haven't advertised anything yet.
I've heard about the big money.
Must be,
I was just gonna say,
must be good. So it's really amazing. Like,
for all the movers and shakers or.
yeah, there must be, neighbors must be mingling and hanging out or something and cocktail parties. I don't really know. I've heard I've had more calls and texts from just random corners of Trinidad than I've ever had before for a position. We must be doing something, right? Because people are like, I want to join the club,
It's a Renaissance staff.
Maybe it's Bryce, maybe it's Jack, maybe it's John down there. Maybe it's the Underwood crew that's really drawing everybody's attention. I don't know. So with the election calendar, maybe it's the outreach, that we put in the packet every month. I don't know, but the only thing I really needed to tell you about now is that before your next meeting on July 14th, there will be a publication by the city notice of election.
Oh.
So I just, since we're not going to meet again until July 14th, the elections code says that we need to publish a notice of election on or not before a certain day, but not after a certain day. And those 2 days are June 29th through, I believe it's July 14th. So we have to publish that notice of election, and I intend to do that the week following, if not before then, the week following the 4th of July. So I think the 4th is on Saturday or sometime. But that week, July 6th, there will be posters around town. There will be advertisements in the local newspaper as for, the elections code rules for publishing notice of election. Basically says notice of election, hear ye. And then it lists the seats that are open and the contests and the following procedures to express your interest. So the nomination period would then begin. I believe it's July 14th. Something to that effect. I have to look at my calendar. When do I have it at? It will expire August 7th. But right. July 13th. Nomination period opens on the 13th. So there's from the 13th to the 7th is the time it takes, or the time allotted for any interested candidate to submit their nomination paper, which includes 10 signatures from registered voters in Trinidad nominating them, and we'll have all the forms prepared for anyone seeking to file for those positions. We'll have them ready in the town hall at the time we publish the notice of election, which I intend again to do that on the
So they get their forms to, get signatures at that time then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had people call, say, am I behind the curve? Am I too late? I'm like, no, I haven't even opened.
Yeah.
So there's some highly anticipated interest out there, but no, we have not even opened the period yet. It starts with the notice of election, and that'll happen. I have on the calendar, July 8th. So that's the day I want to do it. I have it highlighted, but I think I generally tend to work with the Mad River Union's publication dates because you have to send stuff to them on Friday to get it following Wednesday's paper. So there might be a day or two variance on that, but I can't publish it any earlier than June 29th. So if anybody's interested, keep having your cocktail parties, keep talking about, the future of Trinidad and who might want to help shape it. Sure, and Mayor Kelly's going to be
willing to sign. Anybody
candidacy.
that needs a signature.
My robo signer.
Yeah.
Any questions about this from the council?
That's all for this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if I have a neighbor who wants to apply, on what date would they come to your office to get the page for?
So it says the candidate nomination period opens on July 13th. So we'll have the paperwork ready in advance. Probably the day that we publish the notice of election, we'll be getting those documents together. I have a meeting with the county elections office. I think it's next week. Check my calendar. We're meeting with our elections officials to make sure all the clerks are on the same page, in terms of elections when they need, because these are our deadlines. But I have to sync up with their deadlines because we're feeding them information. Even though this is our election for our seats, they're conducting the election on our. So, but yeah, I'll have the nomination paperwork available on probably right around the same time. Let's say July, because that's when I intend to publish this election. The nomination period again opens the 13th. Doesn't mean you can't come in and get the packet. It just means that I don't have to have the packet ready until the 13th, which I will, and you can go out and start harvesting signatures. That's really the biggest thing in this whole process, not filing your candidate statement. Of course, you're willing to file a statement that can be included in the voter pamphlet, but you don't have to, it's optional. And the other documents are really kind of financial disclosure documents, nothing that wouldn't probably take 15 minutes sitting down with me and we have them taken care of. It's getting the nomination signatures and making sure that every single person that you've got to endorse your candidacy is a registered voter, because some of those people slip by, and sometimes it's better to make sure you have 12 signatures. Yeah, they forgot they're actually nominated to vote in Siskiyou County where they have their cabin or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna get an extra 2 to 4 signatures.
10 is minimum.
Realize that they're
Smart.
not eligible. Any questions from members of the public regarding the elections calendar? Okay, back to council. There's no action required. This is informational.
Information noted.
Information noted. So we're going to go on to item number 3, discussion decision regarding the July-August meeting schedule. And I think we know we're going to have our July meeting on the 7th. But I think
14th.
Right?
I think it's the 14th.
14th. Oh, sorry, it said 7th here.
Well, and we don't have it. I want to point out, we don't have anything slated. We could. We got a couple of things maybe that we're talking about, maybe some follow-up funding, some RCAC water fund rates follow-up, but those aren't, well, I shouldn't say they're not critical. At this point in time, I don't, I'm not saying the water fund is not critical, because it is, but
I'll just put in my plug, which I do
Totally up
every
to you.
year.
What do you want to do?
I put in a plug every year to skip the August meeting. So so that staff can have a break, go on vacation, so the council can have vacation time. And unless there's something critical,
I would go with that. I'm out of town the 11th of August as
Okay,
as well.
so you're out anyway.
Yeah.
And does July still work for everybody?
July works, yeah.
Okay. Bryce, how about you?
Yeah, July, planning on being here and I would be happy to take August off.
Okay. Yeah, so,
I'll be here both months, whatever you guys want to do, okay with me.
okay. Well, so I'd like to propose then tentatively that we skip the August meeting as we have in the last few years and allow for vacation time. But if anything critical comes up, we know that staff will reach out to us and see if we can, get a quorum. And usually we can find a quorum if we really need something. So,
Yeah.
Okay. And we don't need a motion on that, do we?
No, in fact, I'll return in July with an agenda item.
Okay.
That the council intends to formally cancel that meeting.
Okay.
And that way the public's notified in advance.
All right. And I'll take a pause, I guess, at this point. Any public feedback about whether or not we have an August meeting? Okay, I think we're good. And then, David, it's your night because item number 4.
I
is
don't
the
want
staff
to.
activity report. No, and I was very impressed that you had time to, because I thought you wouldn't even have time to do one. So no, feel free to walk us through as much as
There's a bit in here. I talked about the highlight of our water operator already, and I gave you that story. Just thought I'd point out a couple of things in this study. In May, the Department of Environmental Health tour that we did, I don't know if anyone that caught your attention. I'm just going to read it. We hosted a tour requested by the Department of Environmental Health Director Mario Casa, who facilitated a tour with a group of academics from UC Davis and board staff on a brief tour of wastewater challenges in Humboldt County. He specifically asked me if I could, or any staff could, he wanted to show them Trinidad. So, and discuss the challenges of the area of special biological significance status of the bay, housing needs for limited income families, shallow wells and perched groundwater concerns about growth inducing utilities. So Trevor, I wanted to attend that meeting, but I had a conflict or that tour, but Trevor, our city planner, gave that tour for the Department of Environmental Health. And we've been criticized in various venues of the city not, being diligent with its, water quality issues in various places throughout town. And I thought this was a nice item to highlight. And I also shared it with other staff, including our city attorney, to say, hey, we're kind of a little bit of a model community for how we have invested in our groundwater, in our stormwater, in our environmental sensitivities. So much that the county environmental health director said, hey, I'm bringing up some that I really like water issues and like to solve problems, academics and such, and can we show them Trinidad? So I just wanted to point out we did that. That was a kind of a highlight of our month. There was a lot going on this month. Food trucks are really starting to kind of come out of the woodwork. We're getting a lot of inquiries for food trucks. People want to tap into the built-in network that Trinidad has of the vehicle traffic, summer traffic. There seems to be an explosion of, at least I say explosion, relative to prior years. I'm guessing the decline in the marijuana market also had a lot to do with this. There's probably some people reinventing themselves, and trying to reestablish establish businesses that are maybe something that they wanted to do, but they didn't really have to do. I don't know, but there's a resurgence, a huge resurgence of food truck requests. Where can we park? Where can we set up in front of the town hall? Can we set up in front of at the beach? Of course, Trinidad doesn't have any policies for food trucks. It doesn't have any public property to put food trucks on. So my answers are typically the city supports the business aspect, but the city doesn't have any clear path for food trucks to operate. And I generally encourage them to work with events. Because if the chamber, for instance, is hosting an event, then a food truck can go request that they set up at that event, whether it be Friday night or third Friday music here at the town hall or something, because what it does is it takes that decision-making process away from the city. We don't have to decide what food trucks right for where and when, but rather we can say, hey, if this event endorses you, then you can have a presence in Trinidad that day if they want you, you know? So it's, I don't know if it's something that we want to consider in the future. I know there's some discussions about using a pasture or maybe a reinventing of the trailer court if it ever sells to be not only visitor serving, but maybe partially commercial to where a food truck.
We have
could
them
be.
parked out here in front of the tennis court during the power outage, 3 years ago or whatever. I love the idea of having, because the community survey, people wanted more restaurants and stuff. And I love the idea of having like a food truck Friday and just having a food truck out here, a different one every Friday.
Yeah, they sign up at the city of Trinidad. And then we have a different food truck every Friday, and we get to know, oh, we have different ethnic foods that come up here and really change it up a bit.
Stuff.
Also, the school, like give it to the principal and say maybe that they could do a fundraiser where the food truck could park in their parking lot over the weekend, and then the school could generate income by letting the food truck be there because the school needs more money. Yeah.
People are asking, you really want it. I mean, Anton and I are just talking about it today. It's like, we need this input from you because it's hard. I'll be totally honest. There are businesses in town that are just like, no, don't let them be here.
Right.
And I'm telling them, I'm like, well, we're not. If we put it on public property, now all of a sudden we're inviting ourselves for criticism from other businesses that want to have a monopoly on or whatever it is that they just don't want how to take it.
I mean,
but I know from
I think the rising, water will raise all the boats. Like what I've read before is like you bring in a food truck and it actually increases
people. And even I try to get into local restaurants. I say I'm a local. They're like, well, we're busy. I'm sorry. We can't do takeout. We do that,
So
they get pretty busy.
Yeah.
Would you be open if the concept of the Friday or specific days of the town hall, I mean, subject to availability and such, would you be open if I brought some kind of a general policy document back to you that I
think it'd be great
use to administer this? Because I'm sure there'll be once the word gets out, we might get a few, and there's got to be a way that we can kind of circulate and rotate these,
right.
So if I could,
I mentioned it to the chamber a year or two ago. I mentioned this kind of concept because I thought maybe the chamber would want to operate it, but
we need more than burgers in this town. That's all we have. Burgers and fries.
Yeah.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
Good feedback.
Okay, hungry.
Just thought about it. I could use one right now.
The only thing, the last thing was is the street lights. So I filed I completed the encroachment permit for PG&E. They are, they intend to replace all the non-operating street lights within the next month to 2 months. June, July is their permit date. So they've selected the ones that weren't working, and they're going to replace them. Hopefully within the next couple of months. And those were the three things that I felt were notable because we've already talked about. Anything else you want to ask?
Anything else? Okay. I'll just mention that Adam Schiff's, Senator Adam Schiff's office reached out. It's their field representative to Gabe and I to have a meeting. So we're going to try to get that scheduled. And so they're just looking for feedback from us on,
Things in general.
I guess, things we need help with. So if there's anything you guys can think of that you want to make sure we mention or.
That's federal in nature, right?
Federal.
Yeah.
Federal stuff. We can mention, talk about the cops grant and, and a few other things.
or that's a sleeping dog right now. Apparently, we should just.
There were a lot of things.
You mean we can save money? They said, what? You mean we can save money somewhere? No.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. I think any future topics,
Future agenda items?
future agenda items. Yes.
Yeah, so in listening to this budget, I realize we don't have a lot, we need more revenue sources in town. And I'm in sales, I'm a business guy, I come up with ideas. And Bryce was mentioning that one of his boards said that we need to have more housing in the city of Trinidad. So I would like to propose a program for the city of Trinidad that would cross off a lot of boxes. It would add necessary housing the state is mandating. It would bring lower cost housing for families and fill Salmonberry and Trinidad Union School with more children. So on the heels of our successful septic soup program, I'll call this program the ADU Dan. It's a streamlined process to accelerate ADU density. The financials for Trinidad are, we added 27 water hookups, which is what the state is mandating. 27 times the 5,300 for each hookup, that's $143,000 to our water fund. 27 times 996 a year, that's 27,000 a year in just water rates. Property taxes, 27 times $200,000. We're looking at a $5.4 million increase in potential, but at 0.084%, which is, we're looking at like 5,400 a year in increase. And then at the same time, more people means more people buying things. So we're thinking about 27 houses all buying about $5,000 a year in stuff at 1.75%. You're looking at another $2,500 in sales tax a year. And then with about $5 million in permitting, we're looking at 1% of that, maybe $54,000 in permitting fees to come back to the city. So there's a lot of different things. If we really focused our staff and our permitting people to streamline a process, kind of cut the red tape, which is what the state of California really wants every city to do, is just cut the red tape, build more density. There's a lot of win here. So as a owner of a house, I've always struggled to say, how do I build an ADU here? Like, what should I do? Should I go online? Should I figure out there should be like models, like Trinidad already has 1, 2, and 3 of approved ADUs that we can rubber stamp and say, we like these, choose from one of these and just make it go. Yeah.
So we should have, for the agenda item, maybe have Trevor give us the latest on the planning commission ADU and JADU, because they have the junior ADU and where they're at with that.
Yeah.
And then you could, we could talk to them about.
And I think if the city said we wanted them, the people would say, oh, okay, let's do it. I think there's.
It's amazing. It's interesting how the discussion that about the budget probably helped trigger some of that when you think about some of the revenues that you receive when you experience a growth spurt suddenly. So yeah, I'm glad that.
And there is some discussion.
Inspired my thought. Yeah.
And there's some discussion about developing the property behind Murphy's 2000.
Yeah.
Trevor's plan.
Yeah, and then
I think it's moving forward pretty fast.
Annexation discussions too in the budget, and maybe we can factor this in when we're thinking about our priorities, or the priority areas that we are going to annex, which areas have the potential for that growth, versus annexing the property next to it.
Yeah. And my wife is on the school board of Trinidad, and she told me that essentially they're going to have to combine classes next year in order to meet their budget. And now with Salmonberry not having enough students, I mean, we really need more housing in general. More housing means more families.
Yeah, good point. We should
Yeah.
definitely carry that forward. See what we can
Yeah.
figure out.
What do we need, 37 housing units by
27.
38 or?
27,
27.
2035. I'm not sure. You know, the state is kind of picky about what they consider housing unit
Mhm.
sometimes, so.
We gotta ask Trevor to see if that.
Yeah,
There's
but they-
pieces of information out there. about
Yeah.
It's a good point.
There's low income,
The J-
ultra low income, ultra low income.
Yeah,
Yeah.
J80s might not
Yeah.
count,
Yeah,
but an ADU should.
they might, but, you know.
Okay,
Anyways,
all right.
Good idea.
Any other future agenda items?
Thanks, Jay. Nope.
Okay,
No.
all right, then, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
No one's saying it.